Pledge of Allegiance by Mr. Red Thompson.
Let us bow. Father God, in the name of Jesus, we come once again just to say thank you for this blessed opportunity that you've afforded us to assemble ourselves once again at this meeting place that you've provided. We thank you for those who are in attendance, those who desire to be here in camp for whatever reason. We thank you, oh God, for the life that you've extended to us from our early existence in this parish and throughout this nation, oh God, until this present time. And dear God, we thank you for the business that you've assigned to our hands to do this evening. And we pray, oh God, that every decision that we make will be pleasing in your eyesight. It will be honorable and it will be done with integrity. And in the name of Jesus Christ, we pray and ask it all. Amen. Amen. Praise God.
With allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith. Why don't we call the roll, please?
Mr. Sharp? Mr. Thompson? Mr. Lorino? Mr. Toledano? Mr. Tanner? Mr. Groby? Mr. Dean?
Here.
Mr. Canulet? Mr. Belisario? Ms. O'Brien? Mr. Stefanczyk?
Here.
Mr. Bender? Ms. Blanchard? Mr. Smith? You have a quorum.
Okay, we have a quorum. First item on the agenda is a public hearing, board of review. We're going to postpone that until the September 28th. We're going to have a special meeting that evening. And from what I understand, we have to do it, and we have to wait until after the appeal period is over, so we'll have a special meeting for that. Continuing on the next portion of our agenda, presentations. Our first one's a presentation of proclamation to St. Tammany Parish Government Employee of the Month. Ms. Brister.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I start with the Employee of the Month, could I just take 1 minute to wish a special happy birthday to Gina Campo, our CAO. Today's her birthday. And she works very, very hard for all of us. So thank you, Gina, and happy birthday. So, whereas Sean Rickey has been an employee with St. Tammany Parish Government since 2010, working initially as the warehouse purchasing manager in the procurement department, then transferring to Tammany Utilities as the utility operations coordinator in April of 2015. And whereas Sean is dependable and has always been fully committed to getting the job done, and whereas he tirelessly processes hundreds of requisitions per year and deals with countless daily logistical details. And whereas a member of the water crew, he has daily field duties as well as an abundance of procurement duties and issues to handle. And whereas we're proud to have him as a team member and thank him for all of his hard work. Now, therefore, I, Patricia Brister, as president of St. Tammany Parish, do hereby recognize the hard work and accomplishments of Sean Rickey, Employee of the Month, September 2016. And I encourage all employees of St. Tammany Parish to thank Sean for his contributions and commitment to St. Tammany Parish. And Sean, thank you very much. And Greg, you want to say anything?
Well, thank you. I just want to say that Sean does do a lot of work for us, and he handles so many logistics for Tammany Utilities on the purchasing and the water side. Everything is highly regulated from our own purchasing to make sure that we always do everything correctly and within state and federal laws and our own guidelines. Plus, on the water side, all the state and federal guidelines we have to follow to provide people with quality potable drinking water. And he handles also all the purchasing stuff for Tammany Utilities East and West. So that's a lot to handle, and we rely on him every day. And I want to thank him for his commitment and his 100% effort every day. Thanks.
Good job.
Appreciate it very much.
All right, Ms. Bristol, you want to?
Back to work. Sorry.
Okay, we're going to, Ms. Bristol, stay up for the proclamation of Mental Health Awareness Week.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would ask Jan. Oh, great. Yes, please. Thank you so much. For this proclamation, I think everyone recognizes the importance of what we're about to talk about. Whereas every year, 1 in 4 adults experience mental illness, with approximately half of all chronic mental illnesses beginning by the age 14, and approximately 75% by the age of 24. And whereas mental illness is a highly treatable medical condition affecting the brain and requiring the same concern as cancer, heart disease, diabetes, and other illnesses, and whereas scientific research is constantly working toward breakthroughs in the understanding of mental illness, resulting in more effective treatments to allow people to reclaim their full and productive lives. And whereas the misunderstandings and the insufficient information existing about mental illness often creates a stigma that discourages people from seeking help when they need it. And whereas homelessness and suicide are all too often the tragic outcome for individuals living with mental illness and or mental trauma who do not receive adequate mental health services. And whereas the Parish of St. Tammany recognizes that mental illness is a real and significant community health issue, and we encourage support of mental health programs like our Safe Haven campus, which will provide a collaborative healing environment for the behavioral health continuum by creating a high-quality, coordinated, sustainable, and humane network of care anchored in St. Tammany Parish. And whereas the parish also supports programs like the 2016 Behavioral Health Expo, which will be held on Wednesday, October 5th, 2016, and is free and open to the public to learn more about local mental health supports and services. Now, therefore, I, Patricia Brister, President of St. Tammany Parish, do hereby proclaim that October 2nd through the 8th, 2016, will be observed in St. Tammany Parish as Mental Health Awareness Week. And I certainly encourage all citizens of St. Tammany Parish to make a difference in helping to improve the lives of individuals and families affected by mental illness. And I'm very happy to have my friend Jan here today to accept this, because she has done amazing work in this field and is working with us every day on Safe Haven. So,
Thank you.
Yes. Joy.
This is Joy
Yes.
Therese.
Joy, very, very happy to have you both here, and thank you for all you do.
Thank you so
So thank
much.
you,
We
Mr.
appreciate
Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Can I just say thank you?
Yes, yes, please do. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, President Brister, and I'd also like to personally thank members of President Brister's executive administration, as well as honorable members of the council, for not only your support of this proclamation this evening, but also of your tremendous support and what you all have done in raising the awareness and the importance of treatment for mental illness and behavioral health disorders in this parish through your tremendous efforts at Safe Haven and the redevelopment and repurposing of that campus. So thank you for your support, and we hope that you continue to walk that journey with us. And I'll also leave some brochures or flyers for you this evening that you can pass out. And this is all about the Behavioral Health and Wellness Expo that is sponsored by NAMI St. Tammany, the Behavioral Health Task Force, and STOPS. And if you would distribute these and please put them in a prominent location so that people can be aware of this event, we would appreciate it. And thanks again for your support. Thank you, President
all.
Brister.
Thank you, Joy. Okay, along the same lines, we have proclamation of National Suicide Prevention Week. Mr. Belisario and Ms. O'Brien.
No, you read them. I've read them too. Okay. I've had enough reading.
Okay, well, we have a proclamation to recognize National Suicide Prevention Week, which will be September 5th through 11th. Whereas suicide is one of the most destructive and tragic events a family and community can experience, and whereas suicide is often the result of serious depression, substance abuse, and other mental health conditions that should be recognized and treated. Whereas mental health is an essential part of our overall health of every individual. And whereas in the United States, one person completes suicide every 14.2 minutes. And whereas public awareness of this terrible problem is the key to preventing further suffering and loss of life, and the risk for human self-destruction can be reduced through awareness, education, and treatment. And whereas an integrated approach to lowering the suicide rate must address prevention, intervention, and aftercare. Whereas local advocacy organizations such as St. Tammany Outreach for the Prevention of Suicide, or STOPS, continues to recognize National Suicide Prevention Week as a valuable tool to provide community education programs in an effort to lower suicide rates in St. Tammany Parish, as well as to address the pain of loss of a loved one to suicide. Whereas St. Tammany Parish recognizes that suicide is a significant public health issue with prevention as a priority, and encourages initiatives based on the priority of prevention. Therefore, be it resolved that by virtue of Pat Brister, St. Tammany Parish President, and Parish Council Chairman Marty Dean, that on this first day of September, they do, and as all of us do, hereby proclaim the week of September 5th through 11th, 2016, as National Suicide Prevention Week in St. Tammany Parish. Lynette?
Thank you very much. I just wanted to let the parish council members who are not aware of the things that STOPS does, our mission and our what we work on. We have a threefold. It's prevention, education, training. We teach a couple of prevention education trainings that are going on this month. We also have a loss team, local outreach to suicide survivors. We go out to every suicide in the parish right after it occurs and meet with the families. And then we also have our Survivors of Suicide support group that meets twice monthly. And we are making inroads. We are slightly down. One is too many, as we all know. We are slightly down from last year, and we're hoping that we can hold that. And we just want to thank you guys for all of your support. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, Chuck. Sorry. I did know that.
I'm going to ask Chuck Palmisano to come up here.
Did you want me to introduce it, or you just want to kind
Go
of
ahead
take
and
it over?
introduce it, and I'll start.
Thank you, Mr. Stephens. Certificate of recognition to Mr. Chuck Palmisano for his service to the Mosquito Abatement District.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead.
I just want to say a few things before we present a plaque to Chuck for his 40 years of service. He retired on July 31st of this year. Chuck is a graduate of LSU. He graduated about 40 years ago and had some, that's right? Something, he had, and some kind of a degree to do with insects. I don't know what it was, but entomology, I know that's. But he decided just to concentrate on mosquitoes, and and he went to work in another parish, and I'm not going to bring that up. But he had an opportunity to come here to St. Tammany Parish as director of Mosquito Abatement District 2. Now, most people didn't know there was a Mosquito Abatement District 1 at one time, which went defunct. And Mosquito Abatement District 2 was into effect and served primarily the 7th and 8th wards of St. Tammany Parish. And of course, we were taxing those two wards to provide that service. After Katrina, mosquito abatement district was located on Old Spanish Trail. The buildings were demolished, trucks were having problems and everything. But with the mosquitoes starting, I'll tell you what, the mosquito abatement district came up, the planes came up, and everything was going within a very short amount of time after Katrina, so that we were protecting the people of the district. He kept on going. He's always had, and the reason I say this, to me, this is an example of a person that runs a government business and does it the right way. He really has, he's never asked for tax increases. He lives with what he's got, and he's made do with what he's got. And in that process, he has expanded the mosquito abatement district. We no longer call it Mosquito Abatement District 2. It's now, you go to the airport in Slidell, it's called the Mosquito Abatement District, and it covers the entire parish of St. Tammany. We had 2 planes flying. We have several trucks that go out and work neighborhoods. We had 2 planes flying. One of them had a very tragic accident. We lost 2 pilots a couple of months ago. Very, very bad time, but within a couple of days, we had other planes flying, delivering the stuff that they needed to in the evening to control the mosquitoes. He's fought he fought the West Nile virus when it was here. He fought the Zika virus as it comes in today. And I will tell you, the best thing that I can say to everybody in St. Tammany Parish is he's kept us very safe for 40 years. And I think that's a tremendous accomplishment for this guy and the way he did it, and without asking for tax increases. I think that's a primary part of it. So Chuck, I'll let you read the presentation.
Sure.
Ben?
Before I read it, I will say from the first day I was on the council in 2000, I got monthly reports from Chuck telling how many flights they took and how much material they spread, and still receive them today. So he keeps us informed totally, and we appreciate everything you've done. So you'll be hard to replace, I know that. St. Tammany Parish Government Certificate of Recognition. The St. Tammany Parish Council and Parish President recognized Charles Palmisano for his 40 years serving as a dedicated public servant as the director of the St. Tammany Mosquito Abatement District. During his service, he was a great steward of public funds and a prime example of how a government business should be operated. This certificate of recognition was unanimously approved by the St. Tammany Parish Council on the 1st of September 2016. Thank you very much, Chuck, for all you do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you, Steve.
Let's take a picture and then you can take it. Thank you, Chuck.
Thank you, President Briston, Councilman Stefanczyk, and
Before you say, he's left it in good hands with Vicki Taylor, by the way.
but I just have a great deal of appreciation for the council, for all the support that you all have given the district and me, and of course, this, President Brister and your staff. Also, our Board of Commissioners, who has always acted in the best interest of the district, and you just cannot say anything more than that. That's fantastic. And our staff, we have a fantastic staff, really dedicated employees that work and they do what they're supposed to do and they know what they have to do. And I just feel very blessed and fortunate to be able to, first of all, to be able to work in a field in which I was academically trained and one that I have a lot of passion for. And it's been a joy, it really has. It's always a challenge. Sometimes you know from week to week what's going to happen. Everything is, well, a lot is dependent upon the weather conditions and other environmental factors, but it's always a challenge, and that's one of the really great things about working in this field with mosquito abatement. Like I said, we have a fantastic staff, and I owe y'all a lot of thanks and appreciation for the support that y'all have given the district and us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, the next item on our agenda is the consent calendar. This is where ordinances are introduced. Any items not pulled from the consent calendar are automatically approved in whole by one vote. Items pulled from the consent calendar are discussed and voted upon individually. Let's see, so I'll go down the line to see if anyone has anything else. Mr. Sharp, Mr. Thompson, Mr. Reno, Mr. Toledano.
Thank you. Mr. Dean, I'd like to pull item number 5 under the resolution calendar, resolution number
Okay.
C-4653.
All right, let me, I messed up. Let me tell you the ones that were pulled. I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Canulette, for forgiving me. Ordinance calendar number 5658, 5659, 5660. These are the ones that have been requested to be pulled already. 5661, 5662, 5664, 5665. Those are all the Economic Development District. Under resolutions, we had 4696, 4697, 4650, 4652, and 4664. Okay, where did I lose you? Let me do resolutions. 4696. Number 1. Okay. Okay. This was written down wrong. Resolutions to be pulled. C 4646. That's number 1. Number 2, 4697. 47, all right. Okay, everything's all right. Next one is number 5, 4650. The next one is number 7, 4652. And the next one is number 19, 4664. Now, I'm going to start down. Okay, I see that, no, Mr. Toledano, you going at which one? Have you anything? All right, okay, Mr. Tanner? Mr. Groby? All right. Mr. Canulette, you sure? Yes, sir. All right. Mr. Belisario, do you have any item you would like to pull? Yes. Other than the one that hadn't been listed?
Yes. Resolution number 3, C 4648. That's it.
Okay, Ms. O'Brien?
No, sir.
Mr. Stefancic? Mr. Bender?
No, sir.
Ms. Blanchard? And Mr. Smith?
Resolution number 18.
Okay, 4663, number 18. All right, if there are any left, would somebody make a motion to accept the consent calendar? Motion by Mr. Canulette, do I have a second? Mr. Lorino? And I didn't ask anyone else in the audience, out in the audience, we do have some cards. Okay, so we have a motion, please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Okay, first item asked to be pulled was Mr. Belisario ordinance number 5658, ordinance to impose a 6-month moratorium to enter a parish right-of-way for the purpose of gaining access to any undeveloped lot and a dormant subdivision or subdivision of record. We have a few people who have asked to talk on this. Actually, it's about 8. Please know that you have 2 minutes apiece to talk. So, and if you find yourself saying the exact same thing that the person before you said, please spare us. All right, let's see. First is Mr. Tom Ballantyne.
Yes, I'm Tom Ballantyne, 7009 Longview Drive in Mandeville, the Lake Subdivision. And this is the Habitat, this is a, yes, okay. As a long-term board member of Habitat, former board member, I'm here to speak in support of Habitat and against putting a moratorium on paper land that's where we build our homes. So I'd like to really urge you to support Habitat and the good work they do. And I noticed one of our former board presidents of Habitat just walked in. So Pat, it's a great organization. They do a great deal of good for the parish in providing homes for income-challenged families. We build everything, Habitat builds everything in accordance with the parish ordinances. While I was on the board, we supported a gentleman to get his contractor's license. He's a license by the state of Louisiana as a registered contractor. We have an architect who is a registered, certified architect, and we need these homes. So I'm asking for your support against this moratorium so that we can provide homes for our families in St. Tammany Parish and for the good work that Habitat for Humanity does. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Lisby Eustace. Hello.
Hello, thank you. Liz B. Eustace, 831 South New Hampshire Street, Covington, Louisiana. Dear Parish Councilmen and women, I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today regarding the proposed Ordinance 5658. My message is twofold, for I'm a realtor and a supporter of West St. Tammany Habitat. The ordinance will have an impact on both of these very important parts of my personal and business life. As a member of our great parish, I joined in volunteering and financially supporting West St. Tammany Habitat around 2007. Because my business as a realtor saw a great need for affordable housing, it was appealing to me to learn how I could help solve this issue in our area. The past 9 years have opened my eyes to this incredible group of staff and people who have done a beautiful job with this nonprofit organization in our parish. You see, it was not until I had the opportunity to make a home visit of a single mom with a baby that I truly realized what having a Habitat home means for the future generation of our children in St. Tammany. I would be happy to expand on that if anyone had questions, but due to lack of time, I will move on to my second issue. As a realtor for the past 23 years, I believe that this ordinance will have a direct effect on several of my commercial property listings, as well as the few residential home sites available on the market today. There are many older subdivisions that were planned but never developed. I represent a large family who owns lots of properties and that this ordinance will certainly affect. Currently, I have a couple of commercial parcels under contract, and in the event that this ordinance would pass, may result in the purchasers asking for a cancellation. I am just one of many realtors who may have the same experience. If the real issue is sewage, drainage, and water, then why all of a sudden has it become so important? I do believe that it is important, but I do believe that it's been an issue here for decades. I ask you to think about the negative impact this ordinance will have on our community at a time when we are bragging about having the largest number of building permits since 2009. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Maura Van Vordersen.
Good evening. My name is Maura Van Voorthausen, 28 Magnolia Gardens Drive, Covington. I'm proud to serve as the chair of the Board of Directors for Habitat St. Tammany West, where I've been a volunteer for about 15 years. And I, too, thank you, President Brister, for your involvement in our mission. My family moved here in the early 1950s. I've always been proud to be part of this community. I considered it a place that welcomed people of different backgrounds and interest, a place of opportunity. We were welcomed here, and I expect that you and your families have been as well. I'm concerned, no, actually I'm appalled, that this proposed ordinance is setting the stage to exclude some people from living here, that they, unlike you, are not welcome. So who am I talking about? People you know, people who help you, people who work for you. First responders, policemen, firemen, ambulance drivers, med techs, teachers, hospital employees, the CNA at the nursing home, who's taking care of your mother or your father, bank tellers, service sector employees, those waiting on you in restaurants and retail stores. Don't they deserve to live here? And to buy a house that they can afford? A house worth about $150,000 based on our recent appraisals. And don't they deserve to be a part of our tax base? Buying services here, groceries, clothing, gasoline, just like we do. My challenge to you, make us proud to live in this parish. Make us proud to be represented by you. Do the right thing. Vote against Ordinance 5658. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jeff St. Romain.
Jeffrey St. Romain, Habitat for Humanity, CEO, 1400 North Lane. I'm here to talk about the work that we do with St. Tammany Parish. As the previous speaker spoke, we have a licensed residential contractor. We work with the parish, and all of our homes go through all of the inspections that any other home builder has to follow. We play by the rules, as we should. We buy our lots primarily in paper subdivisions. Usually we buy 2 lots and we combine them to build 1 lot. We put in septic tanks, we put in water wells. We do everything according to the standards and requirements of the parish. We've been doing that for years. So the question is, why a moratorium now? I know that there's hundreds, if not thousands, of homes in this community that are in these types of subdivisions. We've been a great partner with the parish in doing everything by the book, and we're willing to work with the parish in any way we can to make things better for the hourly wage workers of our community that we build and sell homes to. But we are here to oppose the ordinance and instead take a step back and let us work with the staff here and see how we can be part of changing these issues in this community. Because I'm sure that in many of the communities we build in, the paper subdivisions, our homes are some of the newest homes. Our septic tanks are some of the newest septic tanks. They're probably not the ones that are leaking. I know there are leaking septic tanks around the parish, surely. But I would think you could go out and identify those septic tanks that are leaking. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Terry Stevens.
Okay, you've probably not heard this in a long time, but I commend this council for this ordinance. I'm thrilled that you would propose this ordinance for the reasons that you are proposing it. This has nothing to do with low-income housing. This has nothing to do with Habitat for Humanity. This has to do with paper subdivisions, which have not been properly handled regarding sewage treatment, and sewage disposal. I am a victim of one of those subdivisions, and what I would like to ask, and I spoke with Mr. Toledano before the meeting about this in the hopes that it could be resolved. I didn't have to speak at all, but I am happy to commend you all for proposing this. In a blanket form, it doesn't specifically outline one subdivision. It's all of the offending subdivisions, the way I read this ordinance. And it's very important that we don't continue to develop these subdivisions until these issues are addressed properly, as Mr. Canulet mentioned in the last meeting, and I appreciated that as well. If you would please clarify what dormant subdivision means, because there are lots of subdivisions that aren't being handled yet, need to be. They're in the watershed report that was done in 2014. You know what they are, where they are. I know where they are. And I'd like to know that all of those subdivisions are those that will have this moratorium imposed upon them now until such time as we have a treatment plan or a plan in effect to correct these issues so that properties like mine will not be affected by the raw sewage from my neighbors. hopefully someone can address that?
I'm going to we're going to finish the discussion, and I'll see if the attorney will comment on that.
Okay,
Right.
because it's kind of loosely worded regarding
I got you.
dormant. Thank you.
And you could have called before.
I didn't, honestly, before I came tonight, I didn't know this was on the agenda. Someone sent it to me and said, "What's this about?" And I said, "Holy moly, I've got to go to Parish Council meeting tonight."
All right.
Because this is really a wonderful thing that
Thank
you're
you.
contemplating. Thank you.
Okay, I'm having a tough time with this name. Address is on 23rd Avenue. Yes, sir. Cleo? Yes, sir.
Hi.
How are you?
I'll make this short and sweet because everybody has pretty much said everything. I'm with Habitats for Humanity. I'm a new board member. I've moved here a little under 2 years, and my wife and I moved to work with Habitat, one of our main reasons, and to invest money into the St. Tammany Parish for that very reason. So anyway, we oppose this ordinance. Because we think it'll do more harm than good right now. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, I've asked Mr. Hand to just give a description of the dormant.
Those are basically dormant subdivisions, meaning those subdivisions which were created by individual property owners by basically doing a survey, laying them out, and just simply taking that survey and recording them at the courthouse, not presenting them to the parish for any review or approval. Most of them have lots that are basically 25 feet in width, some of them 33 feet in width, and that you basically will determine it by the date at which the plat or the exhibit was recorded at the courthouse. And it's for those unopened streets. So any of the old subdivisions, paper subdivisions that have the streets already opened, this does not affect those. You can go, you can buy the lots, you can develop habitat houses on them, you can do anything else. It's just for the unopened areas of those paper subdivisions, so that we can actually address those issues that are listed in the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Hand. Okay, Mr. Belisario, what's your pleasure, sir?
I want to speak about this because I addressed it during the agenda review. And one of the reasons I think I'm going to request from Mr. Sharp and Mr. Tanner to postpone this for 1 month. People have talked about this. I look at this through a term called ALICE. I have served on the United Way Leadership Council for St. Tammany Parish for about 8 years. And recently, United Way has gone through a new process, and what they have defined is what I call the working poor. It's called ALICE. ALICE is an acronym that says Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Employed. ALICE represents the growing number of hardworking, tax-paying individuals and families who earn above the federal poverty level but are unable to afford the basic necessities of housing, food, childcare, health care, and transportation. You see ALICE every day, as I was already said. You're looking at cashiers, child care workers, food service personnel, librarians, bank tellers, health care aides, repair technicians, landscapers, and more. ALICE is men and women of all ages and races. ALICE lives paycheck to paycheck, unable to save, and is vulnerable to unexpected expenses. Just one health emergency, one car repair, or one harsh storm could force ALICE to make short-term choices that can result in long-term consequences, including poverty. The reason I'm asking for the postponement, Jeff brought it up, and I'm surprised that he did, because we hadn't talked about different things, is we need to be able to define the areas so that our staff knows those areas to make sure that they are all included in the list of all the subdivisions that we know where the right-of-ways are open and they are able to continue to do their job. From talking to Cindy in the discussion last Wednesday, this is not going to be an easy process. What came out last Wednesday and in a conversation I had with T.J. Smith is that there's going to be a 6-month moratorium, and then I'll probably be another 6-month moratorium. What I'm only asking for is to make sure that East Habitat, West Habitat, and NHI can build affordable housing for these people. It's a simple request, and I think it's worthwhile to postpone a month so that we can establish a meeting with Dennis and with Richard, myself, and Sidney Fontenot, and members from each of those three organizations to make sure we can move forward with it. You know, we can wait 3 or 4 months and then come through and amend the moratorium and pull these areas out, and I don't think that's the thing to do. I believe we need to do this up front and move forward. Thank you.
Is that in form of a motion?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, that's a form of a motion.
Okay, so do I have a second? Second by Mr. Canulet. Yes, sir, Mr. Smith.
I was going to rise to second the motion, but with some comments as well, but I'll just...
Go ahead.
I'll reserve my comments for later.
Okay. Mr. Canulet?
Yeah. And this is all from the big discussion we had last month. I mean, the real issue last month was that subdivision was not ready. Whether it would be private or group-owned or habitat, that community did not need another single building. But we do have a lot of areas that are ready. They're ready to go. We don't have to, moratorium the whole parish. I have a problem with moratorium the whole parish. We got places ready, they can go. In case we forgot, right to the west of us, our neighbors just got devastated, crushed. To put up a moratorium right now, not only is it insensitive, it doesn't make any sense. A lot of people are hurting in this area. We're not. We got lucky this time. I can't support a moratorium, especially right now with the condition of the whole area. We want to do this, let's do this right. But this is what I think. We can fix it quicker than we can sit down and figure out what's got to go into the moratorium. Let's sit down and fix it. That's not moratorium. Let's fix it.
Okay, any further discussion? Mr. Smith?
No more than just to echo the comments of my colleagues. As stated at last month's meeting, when the moratorium came up in Mr. Sharp's district, we pointed everybody to a comprehensive plan that was put together in the mid-'90s called the 2025 New Directions 2025 Master Plan. And in it, there were 9 components, and one of which was affordable housing. And at that time, the stakeholders in St. Tammany Parish decided to put affordable housing in that package because we recognized even then that we had a problem with providing affordable housing, not only for those who are income restricted, but those who also just cannot afford what we were producing at that time. And we built quite a few homes in the parish that were not affordable. And today we still suffer from that same lack of giving the proper attention, as Mr. Canulet said, to the problem. And here we are about to kick it down the road again. We need to deal with the problem, and the problem is not moratorium. Because as stated by many of the Habitat folk and some, we saw last month where we lost $1 million of grant money that would have helped us to build and address this question. So we can't keep giving a hand to the face of opportunity to deal with workforce development housing that is so dearly needed in this parish and affordable housing as well. The question I heard posed tonight was, why moratorium now? And we can go on and on and on about that, but we won't speak to that at this point. We're just going to leave what we just proposed on the table for people to consider. We need to not support, and I can't, this moratorium.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Belisario, just out of clarification, you're saying postpone for a month?
My request is to postpone a month to allow the groups to get together, Richard and Dennis, myself, with Sydney, or anybody in the staff, with the 3 organizations, so we know exactly what we're not going to put into the moratorium rather than doing it on an after fact.
All right, thank you. Mr. Tanner.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Dean. I'd like to remind my colleagues on the council that this is for introduction. It's not for adoption. We have a month to discuss this, meet, decide whether we need to change it and what have you. But I don't see any reason in postponing it. Let's get started on the job now. You know, why do we have to wait? Now, hey, I don't like moratoriums. I've told you that a lot of times. I don't like moratoriums, but I also don't like to see the poor drainage, sewage disposal, and what have you in the small lot areas. And all we can do is continue to create those. Without stopping it, we're not going to handle it. So, you know, I suggest, like I say, this is for introduction. Why postpone it? If you want to postpone it to the next meeting. But let's at least look at the possibility of doing something about it before we just stop it. Thank you.
Mr. Lorino.
Mr. Chairman, as a new councilman, I need to say a couple of things. First of all, I'm all for habitat, humanity, and low-income housing and whatever we can do. I am definitely against sewer running in someone else's property. So we have to find a balance here, some way, shape, or form. And as a new councilman, I look to you, everyone on here, to try to figure out how do we fix this quagmire. But whether we delay it for 1 month, whether we move it on now and delay it for next month, that's kicking the can down the road. That's kicking the can down the road. We have to figure some way, or someone, Sydney, somebody, somewhere in this parish, there's enough smart people in this parish, much smarter than I, that can figure out what we need to do to settle this problem and move it forward and be finished with it completely. So I'm sitting here, I don't know whether to go right or left, because I can see both sides of this. So I just wanted to say my piece. We need to fix this. We don't need to kick it down the road. And I know Mr. Tanner would do that. I know Mr. Sharp would do that. Also know Mr. Canulet would do that. So I don't know how, and Mr. Smith. So somewhere along the line, I need you guys to help me and figure a way to take care of this, because it is an important issue, TJ, for St. Tammany Parish. And it's an important issue that we take care of sewage in other people's property. That is monumental. So thank you.
Okay. Okay, let me remind my councilman, we got a long agenda, so let's kind of wrap these discussions up. Everybody's saying kind of the same thing. Mr. Bender?
Why'd you wait for me? Why didn't you say that in the beginning?
A total coincidence.
I love Richard's. I love Richard, Mike. I love it.
A total coincidence. It just happened to be on you.
Richard, you can go to the bathroom. Excuse me, Mike. You can go to the bathroom.
All of us can.
Let me just
At
say
home.
this. I understand, okay, the intent of, you know, a better storage system, okay, mainly better storage system. The fact is, all over this parish, and I'll look at my district, okay, that's the one thing I can talk about, let's say, in a kind of an expert way. I have areas in my district that this would apply to that have a water company providing water to all of these homes, okay? If any home is sold in these lots of record where they're already built and they have an old septic system, and I know Sydney can verify this, when it's sold, they have to come up to the new package treatment system. That's part of the act of sale. It's a requirement. You cannot sell your home without someone paying for and being included in that sale of the new package treatment system. Now, I'm all for improved storage, okay? But, let me just give you the but in my opinion. A 6-month moratorium, in my opinion, because I've been listening to this storage issue for about 15 years. Any of us who have been here, or Marty and I came from Covington and Slidell Council, this has been something that's out there by the experts for the whole state of Louisiana and other parts of the country. And it comes down to this. Do we, and I say again, I'm for improved sewerage, but do we take property out of commerce? How do we get people to keep paying the property taxes on property that doesn't conform right now? And by the way, I'm not for lessening anything. But for example, I have a subdivision where half the subdivision is open. Totally open. Homes are built, they're paying property taxes, and so forth, okay? They have the new systems if they've been sold, and the other parts are unopened streets right now. Well, we have stopgaps in place to prevent them from just building a home. They would have to, A, build a whole street of asphalt, if that's what's there now, asphalt, and it would have to conform with all parish regulations. It would have to be inspected, and only then, after the homeowners on those extra property pay for it, would it come into the parish as part of our road inventory system. Now, let's say those people have 4 25-foot lots. So we've got 100 by 125, okay? They'd have to put that new package system in place. What I'm not really understanding here is if a home can be sold and the new package treatment be put in, and that's acceptable, then why can't a new street that conforms build a home with the new package treatment system? How is that not acceptable? Now, and I'm ended here. I notice Mr. Mike is back. In the long term, I agree with some form of a centralized sewerage system. The only thing I'm going to say is that is going to take a lot of money, a lot of work, not, and this is just my opinion, not by me, an elected official, by the experts in our environmental quality department, in looking at, are there other, how do we fund this? I understand taking it out of commerce, but in the meantime, what are we really doing? What are we going to accomplish in the next 6 months, in the next 12 months, in the next 24 months? We can't accomplish it. Sure, we can set standards, and those standards would simply be this. You don't build until the parish ever gets the money to do what we set as standards. But I do not want any reduction in our standards. Thank you.
Okay, so the motion is currently to postpone for a month. Any further discussion?
Yes.
Are you going to say anything different? Probably are.
It really doesn't matter, does it, Mr. Dean, whether I do or not?
If looks could kill, huh?
Let me just say, I'd like to ask a question, if I could. I would like to ask each council member on this council that has a moratorium in their district to raise their hand. Okay, that's the answer to that question.
All right. Any further discussion? Okay, the motion is to postpone. Please vote with your lights.
Mr. Dean, I'd like the record to reflect that I'm recusing myself.
Thank you.
Hey, Don, next week, why don't you get us set up a meeting with who we got to set up with, council members and staff, and let's start working on this.
Hang on a minute.
Yes, I've got that, Mr. Tanner. It still passes though, because it's just postponed. Okay. Motion passes with 7 yeas. Mr. Tanner voted no. excuse me,
One recusal.
7 yeas, 6 nays, and 1 recusal. No one absent.
Okay, so the motion passes to postpone. Okay. All right, second item. Let me just say that, and before we go on to the next item, Mr. Canulette has suggested that you all set up a meeting, apparently with planning and zoning with 2 or 3 of the agencies and the involved parties. All right. Okay, so that's the first item. Second item, let me just say the second item, 5659, 5660, 5661, 5662, 64, and 65 all have to do with the economic development districts. So I'm assuming that as we have these discussions, we have about 4 or 5, about 3 cards. So then we'll discuss those, you know, and I guess kind of in the same vein. All right, so the first is ordinance levying an additional sales tax in the Highway 59 Economic Development District. I have, okay, I'm sorry, I don't, and please remember you have 2 minutes. Robert C-U-P-P-A-Y? Cuppy from Lacombe? Is it C-A? All right. Okay, Gary Leonard from Mandeville? Yes, sir.
Evening, Gary Leonard, 675 Kiskatama in Mandeville. Here to speak against raising taxes once again on the public, and that's exactly what this is. And it's at their expense. Let's make no bones about that. Anyone who shops at Academy, Target, any of those stores along 21, 1077, 88, the projects over in Slidell are going to pay a higher tax. And with all the raises, excuse me, that we've had recently in taxes, just sales taxes, but the attempts at raising taxes on the 2 sales tax that actually failed, we know. It's getting out of hand. We're the highest taxed parish in the state as it is. And then this is going to raise additional taxes on the backs of the citizens that really can't afford. And they're going to start shopping more online, and we're going to be in total loss of those taxes and business. I know Academy isn't happy about it, I'll tell you right now, because people can shop online as well as Target. So I'm just out against these taxes. It benefits only the developers and the the political elite that are connected to the projects, because the average home builder, they have to pay these large impact fees, whereas these guys, they get all their stuff taken care of for basically for free. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Wayne Moliere. Wayne, you had put in 2 cards, but the second one you put in about changing it was already after it had been.
Correct. After it wasn't pulled, I went ahead and pulled, so I could comment on this one.
Okay.
Which they related, obviously.
Yes, sir. All right.
Okay. Wayne Moliere, 531 Normandy Drive, Folsom, Louisiana. But I do have property on Brewster Road, 15152 Brewster Road, between Highway 21 and Highway 1077. I'm going to try to read this. I'm opposed to number 3, ordinance calendar number 5660. And I know we didn't pull 5663, but I'm also opposed to that as well. It's related. And I'm opposed to both, as it includes at least 30 acres facing Brewster Road that's west of Highway 21 that has been carved out of the predominantly residential community on Brewster Road between Highway 21 and Highway 1077. I am opposed to any commercial development on Brewster Road between Highway 21 and Highway 1077. again, because it's primarily residential. And if you look at the Highway 21 economic development map, you can see it's carved out, and it looks very strange, I'll just say, okay? And that's all I want to say. I'm just opposed. Thank you. Thank you.
That's all the cards I have. I'm bringing it to the council. Any council discussion?
Mr. Chairman, could I make a 2-minute
Yes, ma'am.
statement about
You can even have more
this?
2 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to just read this so we can get the facts out. So as you contemplate your vote tonight, number one, the sales tax rate in unincorporated St. Tammany is 9.75%. Of that 9.75%, St. Tammany Parish government receives 2.5%. 2% for roads and drainage, 1/4 cent for the jail, and 1/4 cent for the Justice Center. The state receives 5 cents, which includes the new 1-cent sales tax added by the legislature earlier this year. As you're aware, St. Tammany Parish had several important projects removed from the state capital outlay list in budget this year. And I was told directly, in person, by the administration to not expect future capital outlay allocations. In order for the parish to keep up with our growth and not revert back to always playing catch-up, we will need to fend for ourselves. We can no longer expect to see tax monies that our citizens have paid to the state sent back to our community for major projects or in large amounts as we have in the past. Those funds, our taxes, are going to the rest of the state. We must act on our own and reinvest monies generated by the economic development districts back into our parish so that we are better invested in economic development in our parish's future. There are several projects that can be funded by an economic development district. As we've discussed in the past, these districts are for our front doors to the millions of people who travel through our parish on I-12 every year. In order for us to make these largely undeveloped entryways inviting and aesthetically appealing, we will institute landscaping, wayfinding, litter abatement, grass cutting, and other standards for those districts, as well as provide for the maintenance of that. We will also be able to make roadway enhancements with the assistance of a regional planning commission, which could include lighting and multimodal improvements. Additionally, this will allow us to implement a more robust thoroughfare plan and create new roads to help alleviate traffic on major roadways, while providing interconnectivity between major arteries and the districts. We will also be able to support other capital improvements in the economic development districts, such as the Cultural Arts District, the Performing Arts Center, which is located on Highway 20, in the Highway 21 district. We decided on the 3/4 cent figure because it is an average of the taxing districts already in place in St. Tammany Parish. For every $100 spent in one of the taxing districts, the purchaser will pay 75 cents. For every $1,000, $7.50. This figure was also recommended to us by David Wolf, who is an expert in this bill and whom you met last week when we announced our intent to move forward. This economic development district tax does not affect the state cap on sales tax. It is not a parish-wide tax and therefore does not count toward that cap. Residents have the option to shop in these districts or to shop elsewhere if they find the additional 75 cents per $100 to be overburdensome. The revenue from the Economic Development District tax will be kept in trust through a special revenue fund for economic development purposes only. We must find alternative funding sources to supplement our general fund. In 2016, the amount of our general fund revenue is approximately $12 million. That's generated from taxes and fees. And following is a partial list of where our general fund dollars are spent. Parish administration, salaries, benefits, and operations. Parish council, salaries, benefits, and operations. The 22nd Judicial District Court, our ward courts, our district attorney, our Registrar of Voters, and our Veterans Affairs, out of our 2 cents. As you can see, our general fund is under quite a bit of pressure, and we believe this is the best, most efficient way to continue the services we provide and also invest in our economic development future. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for the description. Okay, so do I have a motion to introduce 5659, please? Who said that? Mr. Belisario? Do I have a second? Mr. Lorino, second by Mr. Lorino. Okay, there's no vote. Next item is 5660.
I wanted to discuss something on it. I have my light on, Mr. Chair.
Oh, you did?
Yes,
I'm sorry.
He did. Promise he is, but.
Go ahead.
Okay. Madam President, thank you very much. I just want to say a couple of things before we vote on it, and because once again, I'm new, and this is an economic development district, and it's the first one that I'm seeing. Madam President, I think you could have proposed a 2 cent. Is that correct?
The maximum is two cents.
You averaged it out.
Right.
Okay. How will those funds be used? Is there a criteria set up that these funds would be used for?
I think she just described it.
Yes,
Well-
but the state statute says they must be used for economic development purposes.
Okay, so they
And as
can't-
I described, they will
can't
go
be
in a
anywhere
trust,
else.
and that's the way they will be used.
Can those funds be used in another district? In other words, in 21 in my area, can you use funds collected and use that in another district?
You can. There is a process to go through to do a CA between districts if you want to use it that way, or use it specifically in the district.
When we had our public meeting, it was mentioned that a developer could come in and ask for use of those funds. And I remember your comments there, and the answer was no, but there's a lot more people in the audience at this time. Could you elaborate on that?
Well, it was stated that this money would go to developers. That is not true. This goes into a trust for economic development. I think the confusion may have been in the Nord de Lac Pinnacle project when it was first started. That developer put in all of the infrastructure. This council passed a TIF to pay him back for that. We could have put the infrastructure around there ourselves, but he put it in, so that TIF pays him back to that limit. That must be the confusion, that everyone thought developers would get it. This will be economic development district money that goes into a trust that you all will know where every penny goes.
Okay.
And it will not go to developers.
Thank you, ma'am. In my previous, before I came to the council, never did vote on a capital outlay project, but I was very familiar with them in the state legislature. And I have some questions about that. Do you think other parishes in the state had the same impact or had the same problem with their capital outlay projects as St. Tammany does?
There were 6, I think there are 6 parishes that had capital outlay projects vetoed.
Vetoed.
Ours was by far the most. We are the top.
So St. Tammany was the top parish in the state of Louisiana with their projects being vetoed,
That's
which we
correct.
have already started work on and things like that. Is that correct?
That is correct. And we had started work on a project that was vetoed after we had a CEA with the state that we could start the project.
Okay, well, in interest of Mr. Benda, I'm going to be quiet, very fast on my last comment.
Okay.
Bottom line is, capital outlay projects in the state legislature are very political.
Of course they are.
Okay, no doubt about it.
No doubt.
And I've seen it over the last 16 years. And for whatever reason, St. Tammany has been, as you said, singled out, and we still have to move this parish forward.
That's
I'm
correct.
sitting here and I don't like raising taxes. I never did, never will. But I can't take a position that says I'm going to just stop everything because for whatever reason, whether it's the general budget that the governor decided or it was political. I don't know that answer, but I can tell you it's one of those two. And I'm going to go ahead and support this like I just did, based on we have to keep this moving. It's not that you wanted to come here and say, hey, let's raise taxes on top of what we have.
No, no.
Mr. Chairman, I'm finished.
Thank you, sir. So it has been introduced. Next item is 5660. Yes, sir. Are you talking about 59 or 60?
The one we're currently on.
Okay, go right ahead, because we already have a motion and a second. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I rise very, very, very hesitantly to even comment on it, but I was not going to say anything until, and I am in support of this ordinance. But I just have to take one exception to my colleague's comment that he made about the administration of the state versus what I heard in the commentary of our administration, that it was the legislature that made this move.
No,
and
sir.
Not the administration.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. It was the governor that vetoed
Right.
our
And
funding.
I think our legislative delegation had from St. Tammany had a voice in that decision as well. Thank you.
Okay, our next item is item 5660, ordinance extending the levy and collection of the sales and use tax being levied by the Highway 21 Economic Development District. I have one card. Ms. Terry Stevens. Just for your information, this has to do with the same subject, different district. Yes, ma'am.
Not as happy this time with this side of the room. And here's the reason why. We're talking now about raising taxes on everyone who shops at every major interchange in St. Tammany Parish, when, let's revert back to what we just talked about, low-income housing, workforce housing, moderate income housing, and I know for a fact that a community block grant was given to St. Tammany Parish for low and moderate income people, and it has been used to develop 2 different areas of new construction. One happens to be the Cultural Arts Center, which is in this particular EDD. So you've already spent, Ms. Brister, yes, you have $5.1 million on infrastructure for a cultural arts center, when we've already heard tonight from people and you all who have said, we need affordable housing, we need affordable housing. We don't need a cultural arts center. We don't need that for $47 million. No, we don't. And I commend now, hopefully I will be commending all of you, but it doesn't look like it. I commend the governor for striking that $11 million grant, because the state is broke. And you all are ready to impose this tax upon everyone who shops in St. Tammany Parish. Everyone who comes across the bridge, you'll probably have to pay more money to come here. You're going to tax everybody who lives here, and then you're going to complain because there's not affordable living, there's not affordable housing here? My God, this is just so contradictory. It's hard to imagine that you would do that to the residents of this parish. So I urge you to look at where you've spent that grant for low and moderate income people. Tammany, where the university is going to go, put the new subdivisions there. There's so much real estate here that's already prepared, that doesn't have sewerage issues. You don't need to put a moratorium on areas that are troubled already. Yes, fix those. Fix them right away. Come to my house. Fix them this week. But don't start taxing people for new development we honestly don't need, while you're complaining that we don't have moderate and low-income housing. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I do have to correct one thing that was misinformation. We received a HUD grant for revitalization, $5.5 million, to go into that area for jobs in that area. That's for the economic development portion of that. We received a HUD grant. We have not spent it yet, but we would spend it for the purpose we received that HUD grant. We're audited on everything we do, so I assure you, we do not spend a grant for something other than it is meant for. Thank you.
There's no doubt. Okay, thank you. So do I have a motion to introduce and a second by Mr. Smith? That was Mr. Belisario. Okay, that's all that's needed. Item 5661, ordinance levying an additional sales tax on the Highway 1088 Economic Development District. Do I have a motion to introduce? Mr. Belisario, second by, okay, Ms. Blanchard. Okay, no vote needed. Let's see, item number 5663, ordinance expanding, did I miss? All right, I missed 62, levying an additional sales tax in the Highway 434 Economic Development District. Do I have a motion? Okay, Mr. Tanner, and then second by Mr. Groby. Okay. 5663. Okay, all right. 5664, ordinance levying an additional sales tax in the Airport Road Economic Development District. Motion by Mr. Belisario. Do I have a second? Mr. Toledano? Okay. All right. Ordinance calendar number 5665, ordinance levying an additional sales tax and levying an additional sales tax in the Highway 1077 Economic Development District. Do I have a motion? Motion by Mr. Thompson, second by Mr. Lorino. All right, the next item to be pulled is under resolutions. Resolution 4646, approving the holding of an election in Recreation District Number 12. Who? Okay, a motion to introduce by Mr. Thompson, second by Mr. Tanner. All right. Okay, any discussion? Vote, please.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Second item, resolution number C-4647, resolution ordering and calling a special election to be held in the parish to authorize the renewal of a special tax. Do I have a motion? Ms. O'Brien, second by Mr. Canulet. Vote with your lights, please. Any discussion?
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Okay, resolution 4648, resolution rescinding number 30, resolution CS number C-3411, and providing a method to appoint financial advisor. Okay, motion by Mr. Tanner, second by Mr. Belisario. Any discussion? Seeing none, vote please.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Okay, next item, number 5, resolution CS 4650, resolution requesting parish legislative delegation introduce state legislation regarding the Lake Pontchartrain Causeway. I have one.
Mr. Dean, if you will, please. The resolution that you have before you, I've made some corrections in it with the help of Mr. Han, and I would like to read that into the record so that we're sure in terms of the language. Okay, I will. Thank you, Dan. Thank you very much. But before proposing that amendment, let me just say this for the people that have followed this issue closely. During the course of the dialogue with regard to the causeway and the ability of the causeway to raise the tolls, it was called to our attention that there are some issues with regard to the funding system that is presently in force, and specifically $1.6 million of revenue from the causeway is diverted to the expenditure for operations on the Hewitt P. Long Bridge. And in addition, over the years, but very much historically, certain funds from the causeway were passed on to other agencies in Louisiana, including parishes, including Nord Recreation in New Orleans. And I think in fairness to the Causeway Commission and the fact that they're trying to spend their dollars wisely, it's not fair to place that burden on them. So with that having been said, you have a resolution before you, but I'm going to first move to amend that resolution in the resolved portion to limit the language referring to any designated law enforcement entity other than the Causeway Police, and limit it simply to be assumed by the Louisiana State Police. And with that having been said, I want to read the resolution as it now would be passed, hopefully, with its amendment. Whereas the Greater New Orleans Expressway Commission was created in 1954 in order to construct, operate, and maintain the Lake Pontchartrain Causeway. And whereas Act 875 of the 1988 Louisiana Legislature required that the Huey P. Long Bridge be patrolled by the Causeway Police, which now costs approximately $1.6 million per year. And whereas Act 875 of 1988 of the Louisiana Legislature required that the Greater New Orleans Expressway Commission to distribute funds it receives from the surplus license plate fees in the amount of $50,000 each to the parishes of St. Charles, St. John the Baptist, and Tangipahoa. And whereas Act 1227 of the 1995 Louisiana Legislature required the Greater New Orleans Expressway Commission to distribute to 7 parishes the sum of $50,000 per year of the tolls. And whereas approximately $2 million is diverted in toll money and other revenues annually away from the maintenance, operation, and improvement of the Lake Pontchartrain Causeway based upon the Louisiana Legislative Acts. And whereas the St. Tammany Parish Council requested the St. Tammany Parish Legislative Delegation introduce state legislation mandating that the expenditures of all funds received by the Commission be exclusively used for the maintenance, operation, and improvement of the Lake Pontchartrain Causeway, and that all prior legislation which is in conflict thereof be repealed. The Parish of St. Tammany Parish hereby resolves that the St. Tammany Parish Council requested the St. Tammany Parish Legislative Delegation introduce state legislation mandating that these expenditures of all funds received by the Commission be exclusively used for the maintenance, operation, and improvement of the Lake Pontchartrain Causeway, and that all prior legislation which is in conflict thereof be repealed. Further be it resolved that the St. Tammany Parish Council requested the St. Tammany Parish Delegation, introduce state legislation wherein all such duties associated with the patrolling of the Huey P. Long Bridge be assumed by the Louisiana State Police. So that is the resolution in its amended form.
Okay. Give me the part that you want amended.
And the amended part
It has to do with the state police.
Is in the second resolve to limit it simply to the Louisiana State Police.
Okay, so we have a motion to amend, limiting it to state police. Do I have a second?
Patrolling the Huey P. Long Bridge.
Do I have a second? Mr. Lorino, any discussion on the amendment? Okay. Any discussion? All right, because I don't have, and I have a card here, but it's not on the amendment. This is the amendment, all right? Okay, we ready? Yes. Okay, vote.
Mr. Dean, I recuse myself from the vote.
Thank you, sir.
Motion is unanimous with 1 recusal.
Okay, so now we'll vote on the actual motion, and I'm not gonna, because Mr. Toledano certainly explained it enough, I guess, for us. So we have a motion by Mr. Toledano, second by Mr. Groby, for the resolution to request our delegation to change that. Okay, any further discussion? Any discussion? I have Mr. Wilfred Pelto from Mandeville. I may be totally, yes, sir.
Good job.
Did I even do the first?
You did it pretty good, thank you. Walford Pelto, 203 Chaucer Lane, Mandeville. Thank you for your what you've done there. We appreciate that. Keeping the tax on the bridge is very important. Keeping that money back to us is very important. And I support you. I wasn't sure what was coming up tonight. I was expecting a different resolution, and thank you for what you've done. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Any further discussion? Mr. Smith?
I just had one question in reference to the amendment that Mr. Toledano made, and that was some pretty involved information. Do you have also numbers that tell us what the savings or potential savings would be by making this move from the Causeway Police to the State Police?
Do I have a cost figure for what it would cost the Louisiana State Police? Is that your question?
Cost savings.
Well, the cost savings to the Causeway would be $1.6 million, minimally. All of that money then could be used for the benefit of the causeway and our retirement of debt.
Okay, any discussion? Any further discussion? All right, vote please.
I recuse myself, Mr. Dean.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Thompson. This is the motion as amended. Mr.
Motion passes with one recusal.
Okay, next item to pull. Is it?
Oh, sorry. It's on. You called it.
Which is it? This is Resolution 7. Okay, Resolution 7. Resolution authorizing the publication of a notice of intention to levy sales and use taxes in existing economic development districts. Motion by Mr. Tanner. Do I have a second? Okay, by Mr. Stefanczyk. Any discussion? You have that? Okay, I have one card. Mr. Hernandez.
Thank you. Carla Hernandez, 2818 Mesa Court, unincorporated Mandeville. You know, I tried to save some paper here because I used this resolution because I wanted to speak on all of the other EDDs, but I have a question and a request that hopefully by the time it's going to be considered next month, maybe a week before, that I get this information. I'd like an estimate from each of the districts in terms of the sales tax collected for the past 12 months from each of those districts. Is there a length of time that this sale tax, use tax will be in place? Yes, there is, and hopefully I'll get that answer. And I have, I guess, a question regarding the Highway 21. You know, if you look at that, the Ochsner Health Clinic is also part of that, and I'm curious as to whether if you're paying for health care, no. The answer hopefully is going to be no. Now, there is
sales tax.
I understand it's a sales tax. There is a pharmacy that's part of the complex. Now, I'm assuming the pharmacy will, is that going to be exempt from the thing? Of course, there's a pharmacy in many of these other locations, at Target, at Sam's, at Winn-Dixie, within 21. So I'm curious, of course, the sales tax is going to be applied to all these other, you know, sales that these guys have in there, and I'm assuming that will be the highest. On the Highway 1088 district, the airport is part of the district. I don't know if the airport sells any sales tax in there or not. If it doesn't, then I'm curious as to whether, you know, if that will have any sales tax ramifications. Hellas Oil is drilling or did drill within the economic development district there. And I'm curious whether if they proceed with their fracking operations, whether the tax will apply to those operations, assuming that they're going to go after oil and gas. Thank you.
Okay. You or Gina want to?
It will be a sales tax, so any sales made in the district is what it would, for instance, there will be no automobile dealerships that will be taxed because that's taxed at where the car is parked. So only sales made in the district will be taxed. Okay, so, and on the Ochsner, we will have in place a way to exempt medical sales. There was just a new tax put on medical equipment sales by the legislature. We want to go in and exempt that. So we do have the exemption process that we can exempt those things, and we will.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so do I have a motion? Do we have it? And a second? Okay, Mr. Stefancic, any further discussion? Vote with your lights, please.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Okay, next item, a request to be pulled is number 18, Resolution CS 4663. Resolution to acknowledge the authority of the parish president to enter the cooperative endeavor agreements with the parish sheriff's office, sales tax district number 3, Abita Springs, Covington, Folsom, Mandeville, Pearl River, Slidell for the resolution of future misallocations of sales and use tax proceeds. Mr. Smith, you asked?
Yes, sir. Very quickly and simply, I just noticed that in the lineup of municipalities that there were 2 missing, Sun and Madisonville. Is there any reason why they weren't included?
Yes, because we don't have a current sharing agreement with those 2 municipalities.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone want to make the motion? Mr. Belisario, seconded by Mr. Groby. Any further discussion? Vote, please.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Next item, Resolution CS 4664, resolution to concur or not concur with the City of Covington annexation of 1.66 acres identified as Regina Chaley Road right-of-way. Mr. Thompson, you asked for this to be pulled?
Yeah, I'll move to concur.
Okay, we have a motion to concur by Mr. Thompson, seconded by Mr. Lorino. Any discussion? Okay, vote please.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Okay. That's it with the consent agenda. Our next portion of our agenda are the appeals. We have 2 of them. Our first one, let's see, is Mr. Beauregard Gelpy, Stephen and Chrissy Green, Juliet Holton et al., appealing the Zoning Commission approval on August 2nd, 2016 to rezone 1.98 acres located on the southwest corner of Highway 59 and Lonesome Road from NC4 to HC2, Ward 4, District 10. Before we start, let me just kind of, for those of you who maybe might be your first council meeting, what happens is anytime there's a zoning or some planning decisions, what happens is there's a capability of appealing, and so if one side wins sometimes the other side will appeal. You'll come to the parish council. What happens with that is, and maybe if you read on the front page of your agenda that's out there, what happens is you have 5 minutes. Each side has 5 minutes with 2 minutes of rebuttal time. So a lot of times what happens is that either side will have a representative. I'm assuming Mr. Galpy is a representative for one side. So each side will have a representative. So again, you have 5 minutes plus 2 minutes rebuttal. If you want a little bit more time, then you have to request it, and we'll go from there, okay? This is probably a lot of times the most emotional part of our, some people get upset and all that, but we will keep it very civil, and we will attempt to kind of, to go through this, okay? You're shaking your head. All right. Okay. Mr. Galpy.
Good evening, members of the council. My name is Bo Gelpy. I reside at 812 Fawn Road in Mandeville. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of the Lonesome Road Coalition, which is an informal group consisting of the subdivisions on and around Lonesome Road. The homeowners associations for each of these subdivisions has passed a resolution on behalf of their members opposing the rezoning. Hunter's Glen passed a resolution on behalf of its 122 homeowners. Oak Island, 66 property owners. The Lakes, 130 property owners. Laurelwood, 112 property owners. Twin Oaks, 19 property owners. Deerfield, 71 property owners. Greenleaves, 961 property owners. and the reserve and the estates with their 196 property owners. Together, that's a total of 1,677 property owners who oppose this rezoning. That's almost 1,700 property owners, 1,700 tax-paying property owners. Many more voters, because each of these homes has at least one, probably two voters. You're looking at maybe 3,000 voters who oppose this rezoning. And there are even more residents, because there are children in those homes. So you're looking at 5,000 to 6,000 citizens of St. Tammany Parish who are opposed to this rezoning. This is an issue we feel very strongly about. You received 41 separate appeals of the zoning. The Zoning Commission ignored our voices. It ignored the voices of the nearly 1,700 tax-paying property owners. It ignored the voices of the likely 3,000 voters. It ignored the voices of the 5,000 to 6,000 residents of St. Tammany Parish. The Zoning Commission's decision left us all with the distinct impression, to paraphrase Marcellus from Hamlet, there is something rotten in the parish of St. Tammany. I've sent you all a copy of my letter to Ms. O'Brien outlining our position. We are not opposed to development of the parcel of land, but the development needs to be consistent with the current zoning in place. There was a reason for the 2009 comprehensive rezoning, and the protection of residential areas from commercial intrusion was a big part of it. The Zoning Commission staff report itself reviewed the plan and found no compelling reason to change the zoning, and recommended that the request be denied. We are not opposed to the development of the parcel, but the development needs to be consistent with the actual use of the rest of the area, of the corners. The actual commercial use, not the potential zoned possibilities of use. All of the three corners that are commercially zoned are low impact. There's a drugstore which is closed by 7 every weeknight, by 2 on Saturdays, and is not open at all on Sundays. There's a mini storage that has very little activity at night, hardly any at day. And all of the activity that takes place behind the fence and within the buildings. It's no impact to our neighborhood. The car wash that's there never has more than 3 cars at any time, and there's virtually no activity after dark. Since the Zoning Commission meeting, the company that supposedly is to build the country store, 24/7 gas station convenience store with alcohol sales, that company was purchased by a French organization. So as of now, we have no guarantee that that country store is even going to be built. What the French company builds, their U.S. brand is Circle K. There's already a Circle K at 59 across from Winn-Dixie. They're not going to put another Circle K 2 miles away. Why rezone the property to a high-intensity use with no firm plans in place for what's going to be built there? Simply put, there is no need for a gas station selling alcohol 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at the proposed location. There are 7 such businesses already within 2 miles of that intersection. If there was a need, these people would be the ones clamoring for it. There's a gas station close by that intersection in whatever direction you go. If you drive north on 59, less than 2 miles, there are 4 gas stations. Several of those are 24/7. If you drive south to the lake on 59, there are 3 gas stations within 2 miles, some of which are 24/7.
Mr. Jalby, you're getting into your 2-minute rebuttal, just so you know.
Okay, I'll sum up quick. Alcohol sales will increase the transient traffic, vehicles, foot traffic, bicycle traffic that's not permitted under the current zoning. It'll prevent an influx of customers looking to buy alcohol at all hours of night into an area of multiple subdivisions with small children. It presents a major safety hazard by increasing foot and bicycle traffic on major roadways that don't have sidewalks, shoulders, or places to walk. I ask that you do not ignore our voices, the voices of the nearly 1,700 tax-paying property owners, the voices of roughly 3,000 voters. By overturning the Zoning Commission decision, you can prove to everyone that there is nothing rotten with the parish of St. Tammany. Thank you for listening.
Please have a seat and so this proceeding can go on. Thank you. This, your side, Mr. JLP, has 1 minute, 24 seconds left in your rebuttal. Mr. Shane?
Thank you, Mr. Dean. Good evening, Honorable Council. My name is Jeff Shane. I'm with the Jones Fussell Law Firm in Covington, and I represent the property owners, which are PTP Properties, LLC, who are under contract to sell this 2-acre parcel in the southwest quadrant of Louisiana Highway 59 and Lonesome Road to CST, which is a Fortune 500 company that operates convenience stores throughout the country, and who looks forward to having an opportunity to operate a model facility at this particular location. I have provided you with some information this evening, which I had previously mailed to you a few weeks ago. And what I would like to do at this time is to suggest to you the good reasons why you should ordain that this property be rezoned to HC2. Contrary to Mr. Jopie's suggestion, I believe that the Zoning Commission very seriously considered this proposition. In fact, this matter was twice on their docket, and they in fact conducted a special community meeting on this very subject, at which some of the commissioners attended and participated. And I think it's because they wanted to make sure that they understood not only the proposal, but they understood the neighborhood, the concerns, the environment, the consequences, all of the factors that surround this case. So in its simplest terms, I would suggest to you the following. It's very interesting that with the stated opposition, which I certainly respect and is certainly significant, the Zoning Commission, by a vote of 10-0, recommended to you that they thought that there were compelling reasons to rezone this tract to HC2, and that in fact the rezoning of this tract to HC2 would be both compatible and reasonable under the circumstances. In particular, if we look at this intersection as shown on the site plan that I provided you, it seems to be glaring that this is the one quadrant of the interchange that does not bear a highway commercial zone. It is also very interesting that in this particular case, that from 1984 to 2009, this property, as well as 400 feet deep along Highway 59, was zoned C2. It's also very interesting that my client, PTP Properties, owns the abutting 25 acres to this tract, which is currently undeveloped, heavily forested, with underbrush, meaning that there are no residences that immediately abut or even within literal eyesight from the front door of their home to this particular location. We also have infrastructure improvements scheduled at this intersection. The state has assigned a project number and intends to proceed with a roundabout at this location in the fall of next year. Lastly, I think the zoning staff recommendation aptly points out that there is an opportunity for commercial infill at this particular location because of the existing commercial that we already have at that intersection, but also the idea that hopefully the signal that we want to send to the business community is to develop business along state highways, develop business in the corridors where other businesses are located. I don't think that there's anything rotten in St. Tammany Parish. I understand and respect the process and why others may differ from the views I espouse this evening. But I am proud of the fact that we have a process where all of us have an opportunity to participate, all of us have an opportunity to present facts and opinions. And again, I suggest to you that your zoning commission, who has expertise in studying cases such as this, they were very deliberate, they took their time, they listened to all, and I think they sent a very strong recommendation to you in that regard. The suggestion that a convenience store in and of itself is going to be a nuisance, a nightmare, a problem, there's simply no facts to bear that out. In fact, I would suggest the very fact that there are other similar type businesses throughout the corridor that presumably operate successfully, that presumably do not create the ills that were mentioned by the former speaker, suggests that if this facility is built and operated properly, it too will make a positive contribution. At the end of the day...
Mr. Shane, you're into your rebuttal.
Thank you, sir. At the end of the day, I ask you to also consider the rights of the property owners, the right of the prospective purchaser, the opportunity that they should have to add to the business community that we have in St. Tammany Parish. I believe that this case is about compatibility and about fairness. It is not a referendum. It is not an election. It's about an evaluation of what is appropriate land use based on the conditions in the area. I urge you to pass the ordinance this evening for HC2. Thank you for your time.
Okay, Mr. Jalpe, you have 1 minute 24.
Very quickly, the fact that they own the rest of the property is not a reason, the abutting property is not a reason to change the zoning on this property. They will just use this zoning change as a reason to change the zoning on the rest of the property. That's what they're doing with the zoning on the other corners. They're using that as a reason why this piece should be changed. Then they're going to do something with the piece next door, and they're going to say that we need to change this, and it's reasonable because it's next to commercial. Please don't rubber stamp what the zoning commission did. You're here to hear this case and decide it on its own merits. We think that it will contribute to the traffic problems that already exist and are being addressed by the roundabout. As to the property owner's rights, the property owner has many opportunities that he can use, or they can use their property for within the current zoning restrictions, and we recommend that the zoning commission be overturned.
Okay, you still have 55 seconds. Mr. Shane, you want? Tell us, just state your name, please.
Tom Ballantyne, 7009 Longview Drive in the Lakes. Couple quick things. The zoning commission actually talked down to us and insulted us. We felt offended from the way that they treated us. One person said, if you don't think this place is going to be rezoned, you have no business being here. You don't know what's going on. We don't know how you all can vote on this if you don't know what's going to be done with the other 24 acres. If I was in your position and somebody wants me to spot zone this little piece and not know what's going to be done with the other 24, 25 acres, I would be hesitant to go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Shane, do you have any?
Thank you, Mr. Dean. The comment with regard to my client owning the other 25 acres is that simply their property is the one that's most likely to absorb the primary impacts, whether that's sight, sound, drainage, you name it. And no one else is immediately butting them. Also, I think it's extremely important to note that that other 25 acres is zoned at Neighborhood Commercial 4. And I think if you look at it from a planning perspective in terms of what appropriate zoning might be, we would typically see the more intense zoning at the interchange or at the highway, a lesser zone around it or behind it, and eventually getting into the residential zone. The nearest residential subdivision to the west of this track is Deerfield, and it's around 1,000 feet as the crow flies from the back property line of this proposed development, to the nearest point of Deerfield. Let me end by saying simply that the comprehensive plan and your zoning ordinances envision the opportunity for there to be moderate scale but highway commercial development in the highway corridors, if we're not going to allow convenience stores on state highways at major intersections where major infrastructure improvements are already on the books to be done, what signal are we sending to not only the business community, but to the residents as to where they're going to find goods and services? I ask.
You're not helping your cause at all. Go ahead.
I ask you to consider everything that I've said, but again, I close by telling you that study carefully, please, the map in front of you and the unanimous recommendation that the Zoning Commission provided you. Thank you for
Thank you. Okay, he went over about a minute and 2 seconds. Does anyone else have anything to say?
I would just like to add that the staff did recommend against this rezoning.
Okay. Okay. No other from the audience. We'll bring it to the council. Council, I want to ask you, just since this, again, this is a real contentious thing, please go through the chair with any discussions. Don't engage with any folks out there in the audience unless you do go through the chair. So bringing it back, do I have any discussion? Anyone have any discussion? Okay, seeing none. Ms. O'Brien?
Well, I want to thank both sides for a very professional presentation, and I want to thank my constituents for the respectful and professional correspondence I've received. You know, I've thought and prayed about this a long time, and the question that kept on coming to my mind was, what do I get paid to do? And in one word, that is represent. I must respect my constituents' opinions and concerns. Now, I wanted to tell you, I think some people are thinking that my district is very anti-something. I don't look at it differently. I don't think they're anti-development, anti-business, anti-progress, anti-national corporations. I think they're actually pro-smart, less intense development. They want thoughtful, planned growth that complements the community. Again, I have to respect their opinion because they live there. There was also some concern about the new company that was mentioned, and we all received an email about this company purchase in Bloomberg. And I find it interesting that we're also talking about economic development districts at this time. You know, we want the front door, the gateway to our community to look a certain way, and we want to have some controls about that. Well, you know, quite honestly, colleagues, this intersection is the gateway to the Lonesome Road communities. Now, it does have 3 highway commercial corners, but it's 2 HC1s and an HC2 that has very little impact on the surrounding community. You know, we want to have input on our gateways. I have to respect the fact that my constituents want to have impact on theirs. Now, I also have to respect the fact that while I appreciate the property owners have a right to develop, these constituents represent a huge number of people and a huge number of tax dollars that comes to our parish. You know, one man who actually supported this in one of these subdivisions said, you know, Ms. O'Brien, it's not going to be the end of the world if a gas station is there. And obviously he supports it. What my constituents are here telling you is it's not going to be the end of the world if a gas station is not there either. Therefore, because of the fact that we are charged with the health, safety, and welfare of our constituents, and many have expressed concerns in these various areas, and based on the findings of our own staff, and I will quote this, staff does not see any compelling reason to recommend approval of the request, considering that it would create a significant increase in the intensity of the zoning. Therefore, I move to override the zoning approval and deny the request for HC2.
Okay, so I have a motion to override the zoning approval by Ms. O'Brien, seconded by Mr. Groby. Any further discussion? Okay. All right. Hit your light.
Excuse me, Mr. Dean, Mr. Chairman, could I ask Mr. Shane a question on the map?
Sure.
Okay, Mr. Shane?
Yes, sir.
I went, in reviewing this, when I first received it, and then going by the area and trying to familiarize myself as much as possible, because I'm not from this area. And in looking at the map again, when I look at this portion, and this is just my question, okay? This green behind what you're showing, or they're showing as a store, this piece right here, it's kind of a green with an oblong, pill-shaped, darker green. Do you see that part? Is that kind of a buffer zone?
I want to make sure I know which parcel
Okay.
you're referring to. I have the map and I'm looking at it.
Maybe I should.
I mean, what you see in the lighter green color is of course part of the site. There's a detention pond to the west, which is immediately to the rear. But there's also, of course, green area around the entire site. Code mandates a landscape buffer of 10 feet inside of each line. So that's not depicted to scale, but that is part of the plan.
This is the bigger sketch. So this is the retention pond, and you see this darker green oblong shape?
I do.
Did I hear you correctly? That's the retention pond and the buffer together, so to speak?
That's correct. There's a detention pond. Actually, the property line is just alongside the detention pond, but that's
Right.
correct. There's detention and buffer to the west side.
Retention, detention, I call them the same. Yeah, I heard somebody say something. Detention, whatever, Mr. Shane. It's to hold their own water,
Sure.
in layman's terms.
And if it's okay, this was a detention pond. This is a dry pond.
Yes, sir.
This is not going to retain water constantly.
Okay.
Because there's a difference, and I've had engineers talk to me about that.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. You answered my question. Thank
Yes,
you.
sir.
Okay, any questions? Yes, sir, Mr. Lorino.
Mr. Shane, one of the gentlemen asked a question about the remaining parcel of land. Any idea about what that might happen? I mean, has there been any discussions, what if, maybe, and anything that you could share with us right now?
Absolutely. When I first got involved in this case, which was probably as much as maybe a year and a half ago, my question was, do you have a master plan for the 27 acres for all of this NC4? Do you have a plan to upgrade or upzone portions of the property, things of that nature? There is no plan. I'm sure that there will be development of the track in the future, but quite frankly, the initial thought was to try to make highest and best use of the parcel that was at the intersection that would be comparable to the other quadrants in the intersection in terms of the zoning. But there is no plan, no other pending contracts, proposals, things of that nature. And I doubt seriously that that track will ever be developed in its entirety as an NC4 track. That's an awful lot of NC4.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Smith?
And this is primarily to Mr. Fontenot, if you will. I noticed in your staff comments that the last sentence points to the fact that the front 400 feet of this property before the comprehensive rezoning took place was zone C2, highway commercial. The question is that equivalent to our current HC2, highway commercial?
If you remember, Mr. Smith, when you were on the police jury, C2 was a designation that allowed virtually everything. A lot of it as conditional uses, but
we had really 3 zoning classifications: light commercial, which was very small offices; C1, which was very small retail; and then C2 covered virtually everything else.
Everything
A lot
else.
of the commercial in the parish was C2. When we did the comprehensive rezoning, that's one of the reasons we have quite a few districts, both neighborhood and commercial districts, to try and give some flexibility, because we got rid of the conditional use process, where every case was looked at as a single use. So you have neighborhood commercial, you have a number of neighborhood commercial classifications, 1 through 5, I believe, 1 through 4, and then you have a number of highway commercials uses. So it allows more variety, kind of mix match, intensifies some areas and have less tense commercial in others.
So I can conclude that there is a vast similarity in the two, HC2 and C2.
There are a lot of similarities. There are some differences in the scales.
And that was off the first 400 feet under that previous designation. So how many feet are we talking about now front on the proposed development? Yes.
It was 400 feet of depth, and it was for the entire 27
No,
acres?
I think he's asking the new zoning.
I know that. The new site is only 260 feet deep.
That was my question. Thank you. Thank you.
Ms. O'Brien?
Chairman, if I could ask Mr. Fontenot a question?
Sure.
Mr. Fontenot, this zoning was changed in 2009, and it was downzoned to NC4. Can you tell me the purpose of that downzoning?
As I said, because C2 had such a variety of uses, and it was largely governed through conditional uses, any business over 20,000 square feet in floor area had to go through the conditional use process. So you had a site-by-site, case-by-case review that may limit the intensity and the size of buildings. When we decided to try and go to use by right zoning and get rid of the conditional use process, we stratified the uses, and in this particular case, because of the proximity, the Lonesome Road is definitely a residential collector. I don't know that I would consider it a major street. While it does have quite a bit of traffic, it does need a light or in our traffic circle. It's not one of the major state highways. It's not that kind of intersection. You'll see those nodes at Interstate 12. You'll see that note at 1088, where you see a lot more highway commercial too. At this point, you had highway commercial 2 placed upon the existing mini storage. You had highway commercial 1 put across 59, where you had no existing residences on that side of 59 near that intersection where the drugstore is and the car wash is. And then the decision was made to have NC4 on the west side of Highway 59, south of Lonesome Road, to provide a smaller scale, still have it as commercial, but smaller scale commercial, limited to, I believe NC4 now is 12,500 square feet in a building.
And Chair, if I could make one more statement. I read an awful lot of emails, and one of the emails that was sent to me made a point of the fact that somebody on zoning had said they thought that this was a mistake in the zoning. There was an error that needed to be corrected. But she did also correctly point out that since 2009, people have spent money on, unless they own a business, the greatest investment that they own based on the fact that they thought this corridor was a less intense area. So I have to respect the fact that for a long, long time, people have spent money on this investment, anticipating that the map was correct. And again, I respect the fact that when many, many people made that purchase, they were looking for a different type of situation there. They were looking for something that was not nearly as intense.
Okay, any other discussion? The motion on the floor is to override the zoning approval. Vote with your lights, please.
Motion fails with 3 yeas, 11 nays, no one absent.
Okay.
So we introduce the ordinance?
Okay, the motion failed. I need to have a motion to concur with the zoning approval. Okay, motion by Mr. Canulet, seconded by Mr. Belisario. All right, ready? Okay, any discussion? Vote, please.
Motion passes with 12 yeas, 2 nays, no one absent.
Now I need a motion to introduce. Mr. Canulet, second by Mr. Belisario. Okay. All right. Our next appeal, Mr. J. Lozes appealing the zoning commission approval on August 2nd, 2016 to rezone 1.199 acres located on Milne Circle east of Alexander Drive and Highway 21 from MD1 to HC2, Ward 5, District 6. Mr. Lozes? Yes, sir. How are you?
Name is Jay Lozes.
Just so you know, you have 5
Correct.
minutes and then 2 minutes for rebuttal.
Name is Jay Lozes, 77065 Highway 21. Sort of diagonally across from what I think we can all refer to as Milneburg. First, I'm in favor of Milneburg and their mission overall. I wish them all the best. They, as the requester, stated that they needed this rezoning in order to hold weddings and galas and similar functions at which they want to serve alcohol. And I don't have a problem with them serving alcohol. I wish there was another way of going about this. What I have a problem with is twofold, legally and from a decency standpoint. Legally, in your parish zoning code, Highway Commercial 2 states in part, for highway commercial uses generally located along major arterials and collectors. This area is in a residential neighborhood. If we look at some of the state statutes, we find a definition of spot zoning. This matches spot zoning without any doubt in anybody's mind. This is spot zoning. Everything around there, their property is 55 acres of residential. Everything around it is either residential or rural. And they want 1.199 acres in the middle of all of this to be high commercial. Spot zoning favors one property owner to the detriment of all the others in the area. When they have these galas and parties that they're requesting to have, there are only 18 parking spaces inside the high commercial area that they're requesting. The rest of the parking is going to be out in residential areas. I wouldn't want that in my neighborhood, and I don't think you'd want that in yours. Now, from a decency standpoint, at the zoning commission meeting, the requester or their supporters made at least 2 false statements. And I think the zoning commission was misled by those false statements. One, they stated that they had had a Mardi Gras party last year, and I was aware of that. And nobody was aware of it, is what they stated. No, I was very much aware of it. I could hear every word that was said on that stage. I could see the lights. I could hear the band inside and outside of my house. I know my neighbors could hear also, because we talked about it the following day. And 2, they stated that they were 3,000 to 4,000 feet off of the highway, and nobody would be ever aware that they were having these parties and galas and wedding receptions on their property. The fact is, they're 1,290 feet from their entrance off of Highway 21, almost directly across the street from me, and less than 1,500 feet from my property. although I have no issue with them having an occasional party, I commend them for it. I want them to be able to do that, just like I want to be able to use my property freely. I have no issue with that. I have no desire to have my peace and my quiet disturbed every weekend or at any whim of Millenburg. Finally, Millenburg has stated that they need this rezoning in order to be able to do these galas and weddings and serve alcohol for financial gain. An aside here, that bothers me that they're a charitable organization and they're going to be trying to make money. There's something not clear to me how they can do this. But what this tells me is they don't have a solid business plan to manage their finances. And my real fear is that once, if this was to be approved, this rezoning be approved, it fails at some future point. Millenburg fails at some future point and that property is sold. That zoning is still going to be there, and the next thing I know is that I have a hotel across the street from me, because HC2 does allow up to a 100-room hotel. And then I've got traffic, I've got noise, and no telling what else. The establishments that could come in there in an HC2 zoning are wide open. It's multiple. I could have bars, I could have hotels, I could have a gas station, etc. I would just like to ask you, the honorable members of St. Tammany Parish Council, to override the approval by the zoning commission. We don't need this spot zoning inside a residential neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Okay, you have about a minute, 50 seconds left in your rebuttal. Okay, and I understand there are 3 others to speak on that side, but just, you have either, let me go to the other side first, please. Is anyone here to speak from the Milne crowd? Okay, I'm sorry.
My name is Frank D. Lemire. I'm the Executive Director for Milne Developmental Services. Milne Developmental Services provide services to people who are developmentally disabled. We have a community that is a subdivision, and we also have a cafe. The purpose of what we were asking was to be able to run a cafe, serve alcohol, and have that cafe be profitable. We don't want to do it and lose money, so advertising is an important part of having the cafe be known and have people come to it. We want it to be part of the community. Our clients, the people that we serve, work there. We have 6 ladies that work about 4 hours a week in the cafe. They get to interact with the community. They get to interact with people who are of all different classes, and that's one of the missions that we have as Milne. We have no intention of having riotous parties or any of those kind of things. We expect that the restaurant will probably close at 10 o'clock on Friday and Saturday, and probably close at 9 o'clock during the week. We did have a Mardi Gras ball last year that our ladies were the court, and we have a queen, and we had to dig up a king. We have almost all ladies, and we did it just like anybody else would do a Mardi Gras ball. And we did have a band, and we didn't have any special lights, though. We had the same lights that we have during the week that light the campus. I have 2 other people who are here who would like to address you. One of them is the board president for Alexander Milne Developmental Services. Can I yield my time to her?
Thank you very much for giving me some minutes to speak to you. My name is Johanna Averill, 211 Willow Circle, Mandeville, Louisiana. I have volunteered with the Milne Board for 10 years. I'm lucky to be the president this year. It's just my turn. So what I would like to do is address a few points that the gentleman, Mr. Lozes, said. First, he brought up 3 points: legal, decency, and in the legal was spot zoning. At the zoning commission, the lawyer indicated that spot zoning, while it's rare, it is a case-by-case basis, circumstance by circumstances, and they found that the circumstances existed. With respect to his point stating that a nonprofit wants to raise money, it costs about $308 to provide the services to our individuals with developmental disability. $308, and the state of Louisiana only gives us $138. That's less than half. So as a board of directors, we asked our executive director and his team to cut expenses and to come up with ways where we can raise some money so that we can fill the funding gap that we have. So it wasn't too far of a stretch to have the cafe, which is in our community building, and we needed a cafe to feed our staff, to feed our ladies. We have 12 homes, and some of the ladies don't cook. So we had a cafe for our staff and our residents. And it wasn't too far of a stretch to turn the cafe into a seafood and steakhouse. And we plan on minimizing or capping the amount of alcohol to 2 glasses, whether it's wine or any other alcohol. So we asked the executive director to come up with a plan, and this is what they came up with, to convert the cafe into a seafood and steakhouse. And they were told by people in the restaurant business that a seafood and a steakhouse really goes well if you can serve alcohol. And we don't have any intentions to hold huge galas or wedding receptions. That's just something that really we don't really plan on doing that. And somebody asked us. Now, one of our board members did have a wedding reception at her house, and she used the food that was provided by the cafe because we have good chefs. And another point, as far as the decency, we are very, I'm sorry?
You're in your rebuttal time, just so you'll know that.
Okay, I will go quickly. Thank you very much. The band must have been loud because it bothered our neighbor. And we didn't know about this we didn't know that it bothered him until we just heard it at the zoning commission and now. And we will consider when we have another, every year we do a Mardi Gras ball for our residents, and they love it. They love dressing up in gowns. In our community center where we have the cafe, there's also a little hair parlor for the ladies to get their hair done. So we will take into account the fact that because we want to be good neighbors. We're going to be around for a long time. Alexander Milne gave his money to orphan and destitute children because he didn't have any heirs in the late 1800s. And we're still around, and we want to be around for 100 more years. So we don't plan on going anywhere, but we want to be good neighbors. And then finally, that cafe is not a standalone cafe. It is in a community center that also has, as I said, a beauty parlor, and it has classrooms. And those classrooms are used by our staff to train our staff and also by our ladies. We're going to have the St. Tammany Master Gardeners Association come to teach our ladies the difference between seeds and weeds, because we're getting ready to create our gardens. So thank you for your time. I'm sorry if I went over my time. And I appreciate you listening to our position. Thank you very much.
Okay, you have about 13 seconds left with your rebuttal. Okay, Mr. Lozes, do you have anything else to say?
I just want to reiterate, this is a spot zoning. The case that she just referred to was a previous case on the zoning commission's agenda where they discussed what is spot zoning. This is, by very definition, spot zoning, and I am still against it. I am amazed at their change, Millenberg's change of attitude between the zoning commission hearing and tonight, in that now they're saying, well, we're not really planning on having galas and weddings. That was their whole impetus to be here, to ask for the spot zoning, was so that they could do that and serve alcohol. And once again, I am not against Millenberg. I really appreciate their effort. I just think this is not the way to go about it, to get a change that would eventually allow for all sorts of high commercial activity. And I want to emphasize to you and to Millenberg, I too want to be a good neighbor. I don't have an objection to them having a Mardi Gras ball. I don't even object to them, if they want to do that a couple of times, 3 times a year, if they want to have a Mardi Gras ball and a Christmas party, great. I think it's good. I think it's good for their clients. But I don't want something that's going to be even once a month or 3 times a month to be an intrusion to my peace and quiet. Thank you for your time.
Understood. Thank you. Okay. Anyone else? You have 13 seconds left, and Mr. Lozis, you have 18.
Thank you very much for your time. We do appreciate it, and we promise that we're going to be good neighbors, and thank you very much for your time. That probably took 13 seconds.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Okay. Let's see. So I'm bringing it back to the council. Anyone have anything to say? Mr. Toledano's got his lights on.
Yeah, I do, Mr. Dean. Do I understand correctly that you first need a motion on this, or have we already had a motion?
Theoretically, that's how it's supposed to happen, but
Okay.
it never does during appeal.
Okay,
So
all
let's
right.
go through it.
Well, with that having been said, let me just try to make a couple points. The first thing is, what a great presentation by the gentleman from Milne and the nice lady. And I sit here and say, how can anybody vote against these nice people? But unfortunately, this is what our duty is as I perceive it. And what I do is I call upon the experience I've had in representing governmental bodies, planning and zoning boards for over 17 years at the city level. If there was ever a classic case of what I believe Mr. Lozis has correctly identified as spot zoning, this is it. These very nice people are asking you to take a purely commercial endeavor, limited by definition to highway commercial, and move it inward over 1,000 feet into property that is totally unsuited for it. The fact that they intend to only limit that commercial use is not what I understand to be our duty to be. Our duty is to look at what highway commercial is and ask ourselves, does it fit within it? It's not that they need this zoning to have an intra-organizational party, of which they spoke about. They don't need that at all. But when they start saying that they are going to bring in third parties, i.e. a commercial endeavor, and put it in an area that is clearly non-commercial, absolutely, actually the endeavor of highway commercial is non-compatible, quite frankly, in my view, to their own use. Your zoning board, Mr. Fontenot's group, the commission, the board itself, the staff recommended against this. And I believe they were absolutely correct. I think, unfortunately for us, although the emotions and the humanitarian aspect of this says, let's vote for these people, and I want to say give them anything they need. Well, in my view, first, they really don't need this. It is not inherently necessary to have this to run their organization. It is absolutely conflictual. It sets a terrible precedent, just think about what we will be doing in this level of government when people come to this podium and say, how can you deny me? If we start moving highway commercial 1,000 feet off of a highway, we have broken every rule of zoning and planning that exists. For all those reasons, you know, I would urge that I believe the correct motion would be
No,
to,
it's my district. I'll make the motion.
pardon me, thank you very much. Then I'll yield to Mr. Tanner, but I just think this is one that we have to unfortunately tell these people no. Thank you very much.
Okay, before we go to Mr. Tanner, is there anyone else who wants to speak on it? Okay, Mr. Tanner.
First of all, I didn't realize that Mr. Toledano was an expert on running houses for ladies with discrepancies and what have you. And I didn't know he was an expert in zoning and spot zoning and what have you. And I really appreciated if he wouldn't use his so-called knowledge to say that what we're doing is strictly against the law and all that kind of stuff, because he doesn't know that. He's just a lawyer like anybody else. And I'm a councilman just like he is. And he has one vote, and I have one vote. And let me tell you, these people out there, I don't know how many of you have been out there, but if you hadn't been out there, then you need to go out there and see the job that they're doing with these poor ladies. And you know what? These ladies have relatives and friends who want to come see them on the weekends and what have you, and take them out to eat. Golly, they got a place to take them right on the place to do it. Some of the ladies even work in the restaurant. So it's something that, it's an activity that needs to go on in that particular compound. It doesn't make sense not to let them do it. Chairman, I move to concur with the zoning approval.
Okay, I got a motion by Mr. Tanner to concur with the zoning approval, seconded by Mr. Thompson. Any further discussion? All right, vote. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Bender. Yeah, I thought you were mighty quiet down there.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
I didn't say vote with your lights fast enough.
I want to say one thing in support of, I understand what Councilman Toledano has said, and I understand what Mr. Tanner has said. One thing that Mr. Tanner just said that kind of got to me is this development is a development, and maybe I'll ask, if I can, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Tanner, since it's his district, and Mr. Fontenot. It is a development in its own right, correct? So this would be a piece of their development. It doesn't seem to me, and I'm just, you know, I'm not overly familiar with the area. I am familiar with Highway 21, it's beautiful. But being that it's part of their development, the piece within their development, I don't know that we're jeopardizing anything in the future by helping these people who I think I read have what Mr. Tanner, developmental issues and so forth, okay, to kind of enjoy themselves and so forth. And it's not my place to say this, but if I could, obviously, noise, we have ordinances in place to deal with that. So I'm not saying they would be making too much noise. I'm just saying that it seems to me that as part of the development itself, if this is required to help those people have a place to eat and so forth, I don't see what the problem would be there. Thank you.
Just one comment, Mr. Dean, and I understand what Mr. Bender is saying, but I would respectfully suggest that if the mission here is to accommodate the residents and their families as they visit in a facility that would provide food or something such as that, I don't think it takes an HC2. I think if they want to defray the cost of the food and the dinners, they could simply accept a donation. But I don't think it's necessary to convert property this far off of a highway to a commercial endeavor.
Okay. Mr.
Operate.
Grover? Mr. Grover?
I have a question of the gentleman who wishes to change in zoning. I don't remember his name. Is there a location that these ladies are at now and you're moving into this
No, they're there.
area?
They're currently there.
Huh?
They're currently there.
Okay, all right, that's what I need to know. Thank you.
It's an MD1 zoning? Okay. Anything else? Mr. Tanner? All right. Anyone else? Okay, so we have a motion on the floor and seconded to concur with the zoning approval. Vote, please. To concur with the zoning approval by Mr. Tanner.
Motion passes, 11 yeas, 3 nays, no one absent.
All right, so the motion passes. Okay, we're going. Okay, now I need someone to introduce the ordinance. Mr. Tanner, you want to do that? Mr. Tanner? Do you want it? All right. Motion by Mr. Tanner, second by Mr. Thompson to introduce. Continuing on, ordinances for adoption. First ordinance, let's see, ordinance amending the parish code of ordinances regarding paving, grading, excavation, placement of fill on non-residential properties in unincorporated St. Tammany Parish.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. who? Okay, Mr. Belisario, seconded by Mr. Stefanczyk. Any discussion? Okay, vote please. Y'all vote, please.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Okay, next ordinance, ordinance 5620, ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances to establish a program that addresses stormwater and non-stormwater discharges.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I move to postpone 1 month.
Okay, there's a motion by Mr. Stefanczyk to postpone for a month, seconded by Mr. Smith. I do have a speaker card from Ms. Stevens. There's a motion to postpone. Number 2, 5620.
Mr. Toledano, I am so proud of you. You know what you're talking about. This particular ordinance, this is the one where you're gutting the stormwater management? Is this the correct one? Where all the passages were being stricken through?
Ms. Stevens?
Yeah.
Actually, Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
The item on the, that's been moved on is to postpone. So you want to
Oh, so I
discuss
can't
on-
talk about it even though I should be able to get 2 minutes to talk about
The
it?
item that you discussed right now is to postpone for a month.
Okay, but it's on the agenda tonight, correct?
That's correct,
So I get 2 minutes to talk about it?
to talk about the postponement.
No, the item on the agenda.
I'm not arguing with you. I'm not
You don't
arguing
need
with
to argue with me. Doesn't the Home Rule Charter say that I can speak on any issue that's on the agenda for 2 minutes?
Yes.
On any item?
Mr. Chairman, the thing that is on the agenda right now is a motion to postpone.
No.
Even though, because
That's the
we started-
motion, that's not what's on the agenda.
And your clock is ticking.
That's what's
So
on the
you can-
agenda.
You need to speak on the
The
item that
agenda of
is up.
this meeting is what we're going through. That's the agenda, and that's the part we're on right now. So you can talk to postpone, or wait till next month and talk about
About the item.
if it gets postponed. Now, if it
Okay, I
doesn't-
think it's a great idea that
if
you
it doesn't
postpone
get
it because you're proposing to gut that ordinance, and
If
you
it
really should
doesn't
keep
get
it because of what
postponed
Mr.
tonight,
Binder
you can
talked
come
about
here and vote.
earlier.
Okay?
Stormwater management, you shouldn't gut that ordinance because you really need it, and you need it to talk about it with the other issues that you talked about earlier tonight, where you said, I don't want to see any gutting or lessening of our requirements. That's what this ordinance is doing. So yes, I recommend that you postpone it and talk about it a little bit more. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your cooperation. All right. So any other discussion, Mr. Stefanczyk? Okay. All right. So we have a motion and a second to postpone. Vote, please.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Okay, ordinance, the third one, ordinance calendar number 5642, to extend 6 month the moratorium on property south of I-12, north of 190, west of Highway 11, and east of the precinct S-19 boundary line within unincorporated boundaries of Ward 9 and District 14.
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. Smith. Do I have a second? By Mr. Stefanczyk. Any discussion? All right, vote, please.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Okay. Item number 4, ordinance calendar number 5643, ordinance to authorize a parish president to acquire temporary construction servitudes for the Holly Drive Bridge Replacement Project, Ward 3, Districts 2 and 3. I have a motion by Mr. Thompson, second by Mr. Sharp. Any discussion? Okay, let's vote, please.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
All right, fifth item, 5644, ordinance to amend ordinance section 2-092 of the St. Tammany Parish Code of Ordinances for the reorganization of parish legal department. Do I have a motion? Motion by Mr. Belisario, seconded by Mr. Canulet. And I have Mr. Gary Leonard. You want to speak?
Gary Leonard, 675 Kiskadam. Actually, I'd like to see you postpone this since this is actually in litigation, as you all want to know, and I think it's not helping your argument by continuing to seek this when the district attorney has told you differently. So my suggestion is, well, you'd have to vote against the ordinance to reintroduce, to postpone for the next meeting or one after that when it finally goes to litigation and is settled, because I think we're just spinning our wheels with this particular ordinance. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Vote, please.
Motion passes, 12 yeas, 1 nay, 1 abstention.
Okay, item 6, ordinance calendar 5645, ordinance amending ordinance CS 07-1600, establishing a no parking zone on the west side of Allen Road, District 14.
Move to adopt.
I have a motion to adopt, second. Mr. Stefanczyk, any discussion? Okay, vote, please.
Motion is unanimous. Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Seventh item, ordinance calendar number 5646, ordinance establishing a no parking zone on North 13th Street, Ward 8, District 14. Mr. Smith? Okay, motion to adopt by Mr. Smith, seconded by Mr. Belisario. Any discussion? Okay, vote, please.
Motion passes, 13 yeas, 1 nay, no one absent.
Okay, item number 8, ordinance 5647, ordinance to amend 2016 operating budget amendment number 9. I have a motion by Mr. Stefanczyk, seconded by who? Mr. Smith? Any discussion? Okay, vote, please.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Ninth item, ordinance calendar 5648, ordinance to amend parish code supplemental section under the preliminary approval drainage check sheet. Planning Commission approved 712. Who had a motion? Okay, Mr. Belisario, seconded by Mr. Stefanczyk. Any discussion? Okay, vote, please.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Item 10, ordinance calendar number 5649, ordinance accepting finalized subdivision into the road and drainage inventories, Ward 4, District 7.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Groby, second by Mr. Thompson. Any discussion? Vote, please. Oh, you got clear.
Sorry.
Are we ready to vote? Okay, vote again, please.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Okay, 11th item, ordinance calendar number 5650, ordinance to correct the road and drainage inventory, wards 1, 3, 4, 8, and 10, districts 2, 3, 5, 6, and 9. Motion by Mr. Thompson, seconded by Mr. Lorino. Any discussion? Vote, please.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
12th item, ordinance calendar number 5651, ordinance to amend the parish code culverts to provide for revisions. Anyone want to make a motion? Mr. Thompson, seconded by Mr. Groby. Any discussion? Vote, please.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
13th item, ordinance calendar number 5652, ordinance to declare a portion of Ditmar addition and Robert addition to surplus tax adjudicated property and authorize the donation of said property to the city of Slidell, District, Ward 8, Districts 12 and 14.
Go ahead, Dan.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Bender, seconded by Mr. Smith. Any discussion? Vote, please.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
14th item, ordinance calendar number 5653, ordinance authorizing the parish to accept the dedication of roads within Wrigley's Estates subdivision and the associated roadside drainage infrastructure, Ward 8, District 13. Ms. Blanchard, so moved. Second by Mr. Belisario. Any discussion? Vote, please.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
15th item, ordinance calendar number 5654, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 1.565 acres from CB1 to A2, Ward 4, District 4. Motion by Mr. Lorino, seconded by Mr. Totodano. Any discussion? Sounds like an Italian restaurant. Vote with your lights, please. Lorino and Toledano.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Okay, item number 16. Ordinance calendar number 5655, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 3 acres from A7 to PBC1, Ward 1, District 1. Motion by Mr. Thompson, second by Mr. Lorino. Any discussion? Okay, vote please.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
17th item, ordinance calendar number 5656, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 20,000 square feet from A3 to A3 and MHO, Ward 6, District 6. Mr. Tanner? Motion by Mr. Tanner, second by Mr. Lorino. Any discussion? Vote, please.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Okay, item number 18, ordinance calendar 5657, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 11,400 square feet.
Second that motion of Mr. Tanner before I could join Mr.
Okay, let the record reflect. You really need to get out of this courthouse mentality you have down there. Just interrupting the judge. Okay, I'm going to get back to where I was.
Also carry it back to.
This is a spot something over there.
Okay, 18th item, ordinance calendar number 5657, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 11,400 square feet from A6 to A4A, Ward 9, District 13.
Second.
Ms. Blanchard, so move, and then second by Mr. Belisario. Any discussion? Vote, please.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Okay, now we're to the appointments of our agenda. First one is resolution to appoint and reappoint 3 members to the St. Tammany Parish Hospital Service District 2 Permanent Nominating Committee. That is Slidell Memorial. All terms expired. The 3 people who are needing to be appointed: Edwin Canton, Mary Ann Dutton, and Alicia Ermshire have requested reappointments as
So
Districts
moved.
6, 7, 8, 9, 11, 12, 13, 14. Motion by Mr. Belisario, seconded by Mr. Stefanski. Any discussion? All right, vote please.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Second item under appointments, resolution to appoint or reappoint 4 members to the St. Tammany Parish Drainage District Number 4. All their terms have expired. That's Wayne Espet and Mill Enriquez, Timothy Asher have all requested reappointment, and Michael Arnoley has requested appointment. So this is District 4?
14?
It says 4.
No, no.
14.
Drainage District 4.
Anyway, I would like to
Oh, okay.
move to reappoint and appoint.
Okay, motion by Mr. Smith. I have a second by Mr. Canulet. Any discussion? All right, vote please. What does it say, 14?
It doesn't have that.
Oh.
It doesn't have that. Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Okay, third item under appointments, resolution to appoint 1 member to the Tourist and Convention Commission to replace Valerie Waltz, who resigned, as Mr. Todd Wally requested appointment.
Mr. Chairman, I move we postpone this a month.
Okay, there's a motion by Mr. Stefanski to postpone, seconded by Mr. Smith. Any discussion? All right, vote please.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Fourth item, resolution to appoint 1 member to the Finance Authority of St. Tammany Parish to replace Dave Anderson, who resigned. Mike Gambrell has requested appointment. Motion by Mr. Belisario, seconded by Ms. Blanchard. Any discussion? Vote, please.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Fifth item, resolution to appoint 1 member to the Development District to replace Mr. Peter Egan, whose term expired. Richard Denny has requested appointment. I have a motion by Ms. O'Brien, seconded by, okay, Mr. Stefanski. Any discussion? Vote, please.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Sixth item, resolution to appoint 1 member to the Communication Action Agency Advisory Board to replace William Stadler, who resigned. Mr. John Raymond has requested appointment. Do I have a motion? Motion by Mr. Stefanski, seconded by Ms. O'Brien. Any discussion? Vote, please.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Okay, that ends our regular agenda. Now we'll go to the items off the floor. I have 1 item. Do I have a motion to open the off-the-floor agenda? Motion by, who said that? Mr. Belisario, second by Mr. Canulet to open the items off the floor. All right, vote please.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Okay, I have 1 item, motion to refer to Zoning Commission for recommendations, the proposed rezoning of squares 60 and 61 of South Abita Springs subdivision situated in Section 2, Township 7, South Range 11, East St. Tammany Parish from present A4A Single Family Residential District to PF1 Public Facilities District, Ward 3, District 2. Do I have a motion? Motion by Mr. Sharp and seconded by Mr. Thompson. I don't even have to look up. Mr. Hernandez. I say with much affection.
I hope that's true. Thank you
That is
very much. Well, as we know, in the words waiving of fees does not appear anywhere here, but that's exactly what's about to be done here. Unfortunately, I did not have enough time because first time I saw it was when I came into the building here this evening. Normally, it's up online before that, but at least my machine did not bring it up. And maybe it's my machine that's at fault here.
Carlo, could I just, is it something, do you want to explain what it is before we get into how much money we're not getting?
No, he can finish.
Oh, you want to hear it? Okay.
Well, I don't know the acreage that we're talking about. I certainly know the acreage involved with the zoning that's here, but as we all know, sometimes the acreage does not correspond with the zoning designation. Okay, but we at least know that we're about to waive a minimum of $325. That's the other fees that's associated with that, plus the acreage fees. So that's the number of dollars that we're talking about waiving at this point. Thank you.
The property is owned by the Humane Society. It is the two parcels, one where the facility is located now on Harrison Avenue. The other one is across 6th Street. It is vacant between 6th Street and the retention pond that's on on Harrison Avenue. And yes, we are waiving those fees in the interest of helping the Humane Society.
Thank you, Mr. Sharp. So I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Vote, please.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Hang on, before we adjourn, is there anyone else have anything, item on the agenda? All right. All right.
Mr. Dean.